When we try to perceive space, a space that you enter, specifically an interior space, there is a very fast feedback system between sort of the constitution of the space and how your emotions are set into play. And when we work, we very often start with basically understanding the architectural frame. And if you sort of peel that to parts, it's essentially a number of surfaces. The architectural frame is perceived through the dimensions of the surfaces that define space. So understanding those conditions from a spatial point, the surface constitution, the height between the planes, the ground plane, the ceiling plane, is very important. The expansion of the space is the surfaces on a vertical note, the distance, the angles. So the surfaces on the abstract, the mathematical level, is what we try to really get a sense of in terms of what can be done with the space, what possibilities can be sort of applied to these dimensions. And then secondly, as we work from sort of the abstraction of the pure spatial dimensions, we sort of apply the constitution of the surface in itself. Which kind of voice should it have? I mean, then you speak about the texture, the tactility, the appliance of the material. So I think it's very often in that order, a basic understanding of sort of the spatial dimensions. And then secondly, what can be applied to those surfaces that constitute the space. I think our sort of infatuation of materials is actually one of the defining factors for our practice. We have a certain preference for a slight hint of melancholy. And to elaborate on that, we tend to go back to surfaces that are able to feel embedment of life, that sort of allows time to pass, allows the imprint of whatever happens. So very often we end with natural materials, some of them harder, some of them softer, but each one already impliant of a story, of a persona, of a condition, of a belonging, of somewhere they come from. It can be read into the patterns, to the origins, but also sort of being able to pick up sort of the imprints being used, of having an audience perform upon the surface. So when we start a project, after sort of identifying the spatial conditions that we're to work within, we try to get a larger degree of understanding of what the experience actually is about. And we very often work with contrast, sort of saying that if there's something hard, we need something soft. So this balance act of experience that leaves you sort of seduced, if you will, but in a way where it feels effortless but intriguing, has a lot to do with what is emitted from your perception of the material. So all of that goes very well into our considerations with a basic understanding of the purpose of a space, whether it's an intimate space, private space, or whether it's a more public oriented function or service that needs to be performed. So there is sort of a holistic component in this that we try to balance out with a sense of practicality that all leads to considerations of surfaces. If you're in a hospitality project, you want to have the ease and the warmth, but you also realize a lot of people will be using this, and you need to have sort of basic rudimentary concerns about usage and wear and tear. So you try to balance these concerns out, these different aspirations as to what the experience should look like, how it should feel, and how its relation and dependency on the textures and materials come into play.